Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. Yeah, okay, that's cool. So, welcome to the second call in green in the second month. We've been already journeying for 1 month, and I was today thinking about before starting. It felt like, wow, 12 months. And the first month just passed like this. And in this big group, we have so many different people from different contexts and also so many different experiences. And so it's wonderful to see how we are moving slowly into the playlist laying down and playlist creation. And so we would like to listen to few voices today. If you have, if you want to share some of your experiences, uh, please open your mic and share.
Hi there. It's to share experience with the studies, or for example, the application of a playlist, in my case, with the teenagers. I had this experience.
Yes,
I
please.
used, okay, so I'm from Portugal, I'm a teacher, and at least in Portugal, we are always very afraid to do something without the parents' permission. Um, so I didn't want to lose time, because when I saw a playlist with less than 40 minutes, I thought, now you have to do it, because you have time during your own class of sports. So I called a moment of sound meditation, and the students went along with the experience, and it was very, very good. Um, they had good experience, and I noticed that it was very interesting, because we talked about the issue about different reactions from different bodies from different continents, and that happened in my session. I had a student from Africa. He had a very, very hard process, but he doesn't remember anything. He was shaking all the session. So I think it was a very good death and rebirth process. He woke up scared, but everything was okay. And he said, "Teacher, we can do this again." So I was scared about I could have problems with parents, because I didn't ask for permission, written permission, So, but that went all good. I use my creativity so I can do legally a different activity in school, because in Portugal people are very, looking for something to point to other people. But it went all well. I mainly touch in the points of the head. I had one boy that is very active. He was laid down, but he was not in the process. But 4 minutes before the playlist stopped, I thought, okay, this is enough. This boy is too much active. So he was laid down with his tummy down, and I touched just like this, and he totally blackout. He was totally blackout. We had to touch him so he could wake up. This was very nice happening with him, because he is a martial arts student, and he asked me, "Teacher, do you know where to touch? If you touch in the head with too much strength, it will activate some things in us. If it's not enough strength, it will activate other stuff." And I said, "Oh, Philip, I love you so much." No, I don't know the points, because I don't study that. So I don't need, because I do it with my intuition. So now I want to do this in other classes, obviously, and I will call it. a meditation process. But they all love it. They said I touched them. Some of them I did not touch them, and they this is very good because they had the moment with themselves to breathe and to relax from the anxiety that school brings to them. So yes, it was really, really good. I'm very happy that I could do this. And I felt the energy very strong inside of me, passing through them or from them to me. It doesn't matter. It was a nice experience. So thank you.
Thank you for those who arrived just now. We are doing a short sharing. We want to listen to a few voices of what you bring in today. If you feel like sharing, open your mic and share.
Hello, everyone. I would love to share one experience with the playlist with all of you. I've already shared this with Pi recently because it was quite something. So we recently had a baby boy 7 weeks ago, and I'm in the process of breastfeeding. And we found out maybe a week ago or a bit more that some of the milk tracts in my breasts are blocked. So he was not getting the full potential of milk that he could have. And I have not been really doing many playlists since he was born. I feel that there's a lot of, like, the senses are just so overloaded when you come into this world. I can just see that he's you can sense that there's so much happening. So I have not put on a full-on playlist for the two of us until then. This was the first time I put the music on, and I just wanted to, I had to sort of process and go into a trust, like the music is not too much, and it's not, this is actually quite connected to his vibration at the moment. I feel that the playlist, and so we put on the Anything is Possible playlist, and first I just was laying and connecting with my own sort of networks, brain network and nervous system, and like visualizing a bit like how the both veins and skeleton and all these systems that are in my physical body, I was visualizing. And then from there, I also started thinking about the breasts and the tracts and the milk, and like, so allowing the energy and like surrendering into a full flow of all these pathways in my body, and connecting even to all, you know, to the bigger network. So for a moment, I was meditating on this in the beginning of the playlist, and then I started. I think a moment, after a moment, he actually was sleeping, and maybe a half an hour in, he woke up, and there's something I'm forgetting, but it's fine. And then I take him in my arms, and he's very calm, and he's been a very all over the place baby, and he's super calm, and the music is still with volume, and I'm like, okay. We look into each other's eyes, and we connect, and I can actually see he's super calm, and then he's going into, like, when the babies are drinking a lot of milk, they go into a high, and their eyes go like roll back to their head, and he was like doing that in and out from eye contact with me, like looking into my eyes, and then like going into some what looks like REM, or like when I hold space, I see people going into this, and it looks sometimes like they're in REM state. And he was sort of like just going in and out and passing into the connection with me, and out and in, and definitely in full trust. We could feel like a very significant sort of drop into a trust. And there's some other points in the journey, but this is sort of the most significant, because after our connection, and like after I'm holding him like this, my breasts have just squirted a lot of milk. So there was just, it almost felt like it just worked immediately. And like even the breast that is quite blocked was already like so there was pathways were opening, and since this playlist with him, like I've been able to sort of have a little bit more milk passing through, and I don't know, there was just a beautiful moment where I could also just trust that I was enough for him, and my body was enough for him, and that we could trust. So yeah, I wanted to share that with you all. Looking forward to the call now.
Thank you. Wow. Good to hear this. We can do one more sharing. If somebody, if you feel like sharing, open your mic.
Okay, I guess maybe we could start. Okay, hi everyone. Yeah, we can open the mic later for further sharings. Let's try to see everyone. Wow, thank you. That was beautiful, Una. I heard that story directly from you before, but this brings back like a lot. I really like the story from Portugal as well. Your name is SG, so I'll just call you SG.
Sabrina.
There you go, Sabrina. There's something very exciting about that as well. Now that we're seeing innerdance spreading across many schools, we hosted at the very last day of our training here in Maya. Sorry, not here. I'm in Singapore right now, where I'm about to do a training tomorrow for a whole bunch of people. But on our last day in Palawan, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, we were doing a course in Maya, and on the last day, normally we just send people out to the school. So yeah, it's just hard to talk about the experiences people had in holding the space for the local Filipino students. wow, this is so deep. Like everyone was crying, the students were crying, the facilitators were crying, the person who was in charge of holding the camera was crying as to how quickly things can be opened. The playlist was maybe at the very least 10 minutes long, could be 12 minutes long. Like anyone who's in Maya can share about that later. But there's something happening with the schools. Okay, so I'd like to look at the website a little bit. Was looking through the experiences that are logged in. I normally visit this just to see, okay, who has been diving deep into the process. Like the last one for anything is possible is Simona. And there it seems like there's a lot that's happened there. Thank you for sharing, Simona. I was particularly interested in this one by Shana. I want to read it. I used this playlist for my mom and dad. Her dad had a lot of back pain and had to be on painkillers on a daily basis. So yeah, he was experiencing, I think, these side effects in the painkillers. So it's pretty interesting that she and her dad spent the new year doing a process, and yeah, something happened. Like I think, yeah, he couldn't sleep, so there was probably a lot of things churning up. And on the third day, there was the part of the wave where he just collapsed. So when I was reading this, I was just amazed. I just saw this morning. Like, wow, the pain in his stomach disappeared. And her mom, I mean, fibromyalgia is a big deal. Rheumatism can be quite painful as well. So I guess, yeah, she did the session for both her mom and her dad. And here, like, to see the pain also has gone. So it's like, wow, it's just really amazing. And we're hearing these stories again and again over the last days, weeks, months, years. So what I liked about Sabrina's sharing is it opens up exactly the same theme I want to cover today. I think this actually should be one of the more important openings for anyone holding the space. Like, how do you talk about this to people? To do it within a school situation is not easy. To do it in a medical system has its own challenges as well. I think one of the most challenging is when you try to talk about it in the public. Like so many people try to write about this. It's like, okay, I need to write something for an invite, for a workshop, for a training. And very often this stumps people. It's like, okay, how to get past like the first word, like, okay, how do I talk about this? How do I describe this? This is not easy. For this reason, a lot of people would rather use videos and just demonstrate or show it to others, because then just, yeah, that's what it is, just see it. But to put it into words is not easy. So there's some difficulty in the description process. Right now I'm working with schools, with doctors, with healers, and coming up with the words hasn't been so hard anymore. I find it easier to explain it rather than to describe it. To describe it means to, like grope around and try to more or less point at it. It's that one. I think it's that one. To explain would be to go inside the concept and to look at the structure. So right now, one of our upcoming possible projects is we received an invitation to bring the process, because they saw what we were doing with the Department of Education in the schools, to bring it to the prison system. And this is not just any prison system. This is the biggest by land area prison system in the Philippines. The prison is a huge colony. It's about 24,000 hectares. And they're asking us to build like an innerdance center, which is similar to what we built in the school, which is made of mud house technology and ecobricks. And then they want us to bring therapy to the tens of thousands of prisoners who are going to be there. I told them I'm leaving for Singapore. I'll see to it when we come back. So I find that I'm able to make presentations to people in a way that's not difficult anymore. It could be like a short conversation. It could be like a whole presentation. It could be a series of meetings. And I find that there's some strong clarity there. There's a lot more trust and there's a lot more context. And this is what the science helps with. It really helps to understand what's happening like in this system. For this reason, we were doing more and more research. We're doing more and more conversational based training modes, like really going deep into certain topics and bringing in experts, bringing in different points of view, really looking at the feedbacks. And this is why we're together now, like within a 1-year journey space. So I want to look at some ways to start out. How do you yourself get into that situation where you might be able to present this safely and continuously using terminologies and like references or reference that would feel safe for many and would feel rich. I think that's a really good way to start. And to get to that, we need some kind of situationer. Like, what's the situation here? Where are we now? Exactly what might be happening right now in the world of spirit, in the world of science, both. There should be some kind of meeting place. So I have a lot of empathy for those of you who are beginning to do it. Okay, so I'm going to go into, I have a whole bunch of notes. So I'm going to be taking notes or mirroring those notes with you. It's my way of thinking out loud. All right, so let's begin. Thank you, Una, for your sharing. I think that's actually quite a beautiful sharing as well. I think Una's sharing in particular is powerful. Her experience with her baby. Like breastfeeding has to do with the production and release of certain chemicals, particularly like hormones like oxytocin and prolactin. In particular, I would like to look at oxytocin because this is
Hi, if you're trying to share some images, it's not coming up.
yeah. Oh, I didn't do a screen share. So that would make sense to do. Yeah, thank you. Keep pointing that out, and the last caller was doing the same thing. So oxytocin is not just for women who are about to give birth or for women who need to breastfeed. Oxytocin is the hormone that we need to secrete within the process, because oxytocin is the trust hormone. And when that is not present in the space holder nor in the bodies that we're holding, then there will not be the experience. So oxytocin is that which opens. There's something about your sharing that opens us up hugely, Una. So I want to thank you for sharing that super vulnerable, super personal process. It's actually quite frustrating to be in the waves of the mother, because you lose control of the body, and the chemicals just go all over the place. So yeah, when I was speaking to Una, there was all kinds of mappings going on between us, not just to do with oxytocin, but also dopamine, prolactin, serotonin, cortisol. So that's just maybe one possible way to map things out. We're not going to go too deeply into this right now, because we need to take our time to land in these. But this is what I mean about the difference between description or explanation. Description can use a lot of words, and it can do very well in pointing at the essence, the sense of a thing. Explanation can be quick, but it normally can also take a lot of space, and it can take a lot of time. It needs to happen within a setting that's slowed down, where there's already a lot of context placed, and trust exists in the room. So we're going to weaving across descriptions and explanations here, because, and even as we watch you yourself learn to describe what it is that we do, what it is that is already inside our systems that we want to unleash in everyone. Okay, so situationer, where are we right now in the world? Like I was reading the entry in Wikipedia on the topic of like rationality. We live in a very rational world, and innerdance isn't exactly what you would call like a rational process. A person acts rationally if they have a good reason for what they're doing. And a lot of people in our work, they just end up doing things without any reason for doing it. And just like Sabrina shared, or Una, they didn't have a reason for putting on like that playlist for like either a baby or the students. Something just new. So there's like a different reasoning where everything happens for a reason, even though it doesn't seem like a good reason to open something up, let's say to students, when you haven't had permission for the parents. So rationality is the quality of rationally is, let's say, is being guided by reason. So in many ways, we are bordering on the edge of this. We can only rationalize the process that we're doing so much. Yet we live in a world where human beings around us are very rational. So we're not going to throw out how the world is. We are interacting with the world. And so we are interested in how to present the work. One other aspect of rationality is a belief, and we're going to be looking at belief alongside rationality. A belief is rational if it is based on strong evidence. Strong evidence. So what does that mean for us in the emergent spiritual community, where we're not exactly backed by strong science always? We're somewhere between the spiritual and the scientific, and we need to be able to weave around this. We're not just here to unravel threads. We're here to weave threads together, to create some kind of inclusivity, to create inclusion, inclusivity, to create inclusion into all these worlds that might be polarized. So science and spirituality are usually seen to be, there are certain things acceptable in religion, and there are things accepted by science. And what we would ask, what would happen if we come into insight that brings knowledges and wisdom points that don't fit into these boxes, as Sabrina shapes with her hand, like there are boxes out there. How do we fit into those boxes? So this month, one of the promised topics in the website is we're needing to talk about the mind-body problem, which brings about this separation being experienced like in the world. When it comes to the study of the psychological and the biological, there hasn't really been a conclusive, coherent meeting point between the mind and the body. And in the cognitive sciences, there's a lot of understanding of how in the past rationality itself is disembodied. Knowledge and reasoning is a mental state, and it really hasn't been strongly understood as a physical state as well. It's only lately where we start to understand that the thinking and feeling process is somehow embodied, that you can only think so much without a body, that you are here now storing your experiences inside a body. And when we say body, there's so many connotations with body, so that people just say it's just a body. It's just a body. When we look at just, it's it belittles the body, it reduces the body. So there's almost like this competition between the mind and the body. It's either does the mind dominate the body, or does the body dominate the mind? And what is this work we're doing that somehow allows these both to communicate? So somehow there still is a thinking process. Is that a lot of the powers that aren't usually considerable, that belongs to the body, opening that up, the body seems to know something. There's a wisdom there. So there's an embodiment I think that's taking place now, and this is partly what the inner dance hopes to bridge. Like there's something in the experience that is in fact bringing an awareness of body wisdom, and the mind isn't going to shut down in the long term. We think, okay, to make this work happen, we need to get rid of that. No, the mind would be there upon waking. Even when you sleep, the mind is going to be there. When you go to sleep, does the mind go away? I don't know. Like studying the different networks, like brain networks, sometimes the brain actually lights up even more when we're sleeping than when we are awake. So something knows constantly, no matter what's happening, something much, 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 much bigger. Okay, so let's see. Let's look at truth now, or today. Like, what is true as we are exposed to so many people coming up with their own like knowledge claims. When someone says they know something, how do we know that they know? And that would be you. You would yourself be putting forward knowledge claims. It could be for a school, for a parent, for, let's say, a patient if you're a doctor, even, let's say, a parent to a child or a child to a parent. When you say something, how do you know that what you say is true? What is truth? This would bring us into the realm of epistemology, which is the theory of knowledge, or the philosophy of understanding the conditions of truth. What are the truth conditions? And one of the, like long-term tenets of epistemology from ancient, from the antiquities, from the Greek through the modern philosophers, especially when you think of Kantian thought, truth must be justified, and that it needs to be believed in. So JTB is what it's called. What is justified true belief? So these are three basic criterions to hold if something is to be regarded seriously by especially the philosophers, the scientists. So if you were to bring this out into the world, what you put out normally needs to be JTB. That when you speak something, are you able to bring about a justification for it? When I was in marketing, when we were being given trainings to put out claims in ads, when you put anything out, like, do you know what you're saying? Are you able to justify through careful substantiation? So applying that to what we're doing, we're coming closer and closer to this. And I guess like a lot of the terms people use, the ontologies that we put out, when you like, I was just thinking about this on the airplane. It's like, yeah, I can see that. Like even with the way people present the work, let's say, in my own process, like when I was living in the island and it was first starting to share the inner dance, I had an understanding of light as it was expressed in the body, because I was living in light. I was living coconuts. I was experiencing lightness. I was speaking to light. Light for me was enough to go around the planet and share the work in a way, like light justified it. I perceived oneness. Everything happened for a reason. So oneness justified it. So when I listened to a lot of people who would come to Maya or write to us, like they would use these terms like, oh, Kundalini justifies it, or life force energy justifies it. Like the mind needs some sort of causation, like causal justification in order to sustain one's service. And without this, it's very hard to stay consistent, because we are driven, we are motivated by inherently what we hold not just true, but what we believe in. You know, it's one thing to justify it, but if we don't actually believe it, does it mean that it's true? You know? Yeah, so I think that's a good place to start. Where are we in this? Well, this is already quite interesting, because listening to the stories, listening to stories people tell or write, like in the website, all these stories, people often needed very, very little justification in order to arrive at truth. It is possible to arrive at truth seemingly in a direct format, you know, like to have deep personal access to truth. I think that's one of the powers of what is happening in the work. Like, is it possible that truth exists from within? Like, and is it possible to see that from like an external space? That we are learning the mechanisms of how we can find maybe a universal truth, like a true truth, where maybe everything, everyone, you know, everyone, every day, everything is true. And we merely need to find those conditions where we can see it, where that might have been taken away from us. So in a way, just asking someone to lay down already brings some of those conditions about. You know, let's say people were minding their own business. They were, let's say, walking around, like doing their own thing, working, studying, running around. And suddenly you create those conditions where truth from everywhere might come through. That's actually quite potent. It's actually quite powerful. But because right now we are in a situation where there's not just one truth, there's many truths, and depending on who you're speaking to, right? When you put this out there, the moment you speak or talk about it, when you open this up, like in a, let's say, workshop space or in an advertising space, as soon as you speak it, you're already hearing what people might be thinking, which is what they're holding in their bodies. You can hear it. As soon as you speak it, you can hear it. And the very act of speaking it already channels what are people holding. That is how communication happens. And I'm pretty sure that's happening to a lot of us, a lot of you. As soon as you put something out, you're putting something in. So the difficulty here is the fact that the energy we're holding belongs often in the domain that is outside of words. So to already try to talk about something that belongs outside of the speaking, listening process, you're already channeling like something much bigger, and that dynamic already brings something huge. Over the last week, I was looking at a particular interesting section in Wikipedia. It's called Western. What is that? Let me go to my notes. Esotericism. I'm going to bring this up. I'm not a Western, but I am partly Westernized. When people first came upon the inner dance, they were describing it as esoteric. Like, okay, you're esoteric. Hi. And what you're bringing in are esoteric concepts using esoteric language. So I decided to read up on esotericism as a movement that might have begun centuries ago. Etymologically, esotericism started to come into use in antiquity, but in its normal usage now, it was in the 17th century when esotericism came up. What I found really interesting in this concept is it seems to come in between two spaces, from, let's say, the 17th century through the Age of Enlightenment and onwards up until today. It mediates or lives in the space in between religious doctrine and scientific rationalism. So when you hear esoteric, what comes to mind would be, okay, like hidden knowledge, that which is passed on, that which believes in universal elements, yet also is largely mediated by rituals and symbols. So in many ways, esotericism has been holding space for a duration, for a long time, whereby knowledge that is deemed unacceptable to this domain and this domain, what you might call rejected knowledge that doesn't belong to scientific law, scientific tenets, or religious doctrine. Where would it go? So Western era esotericism could be within like New Age. It like the word pseudoscience comes up when there are radical, yes, semi-scientific, but hasn't really been proven. Like conspiracy theories are in part like interrelated with modern esotericism, like shamanism, and I guess the word Western is there as to point out that the fact that initially there wasn't really a counterpart in the Orient or the East as to the same kind of movement. There are many such movements globally right now, but initially, like throughout history, because of the severe control there was in containing truths within these domains, there needed to be almost a reaction to that, the judgments that were placed upon people who didn't believe in this, or who didn't believe in that. Like that's why it was more or less like a secretive thing. So right now, I feel that inner dance is being pegged automatically just because of the way it looks like for many. In my own experiences, inner dance wasn't really esoteric. I don't use esoteric terms. I might have borrowed a few, and they might have influenced me, but from my childhood all the way to the present moment, I don't associate myself with just one specific movement. I don't use New Age pseudoscientific conspiratorial or shamanic terms, because I don't belong to those communities. Like I was born here. I was born into a very intellectual environment surrounded by books. And I was also born into a very, very strict doctrinal space. So even as I ruptured or emerged out of like the tightness of this, my quest has been to find like still like a middle space. I'm interested in inclusion. I'm not interested in invalidating any truth out there that says, okay, you guys don't know what you're talking about, or you think you know what you're talking about. I find it interesting to find like always like a third space, not a reactive space. I'm not interested in sustaining that modality of rejecting or invalidating that, okay, I know more, you know less. I don't feel it helps. So I've always been interested in holding inner dance as something other than what would automatically be the descriptions people put. Because when I first came out in newspapers, magazines, and people were putting out stories, the descriptions were actually quite esoteric, and I can understand that. They're, like 17 or 16 years ago, this thing that was happening in the body was just so mysterious to people that there was this tendency to try to compare it with Indian tradition, or there were articles that came out that tried to compare it to Indonesian rituals, and because that's how the mind works. Like, to come into an understanding, there needs to be some analysis that put a whole bunch of things from the past and then put it up in the present, without opening up the possibility that maybe this is something else altogether. So right now, I'm in Singapore. And Singapore was the womb space for inner dance. Like it was where the energy really settled first before it started to spread across the whole world. So when you study Singapore is very, very modern. It's like the Asian Switzerland. It's highly urban. They say the most millionaires in the world live in Singapore per capita. Singapore is also made up of different diverse cultural backdrops. It's mostly like the ancient cultures of the Chinese, the Indians, and the Malay community. So when inner dance first came into the picture here, I think maybe way back in 2009, and it exploded where everyone was talking about inner dance at a certain point. People would bring in to the room like a lot of the elements, the superstitions, the yogas, you know, the indigeneity, but also also this, you know, because there was a lot of wealth here and there were so many Westerners living in Singapore. There were a lot of Western ideas. So when people go into the process, then they would talk about the Pleiadians and the Lemurians and the Atlanteans, a lot of which aren't really initially coming from a Singaporean space. So there were still quite a lot of Orientalist tendencies here. And Occidentalism. So I found that was actually quite interesting already, considering inner dance came from a rupture. It didn't come from cultural contexts. It didn't come from these terminologies that are being bound up initially. So yeah, I thought that's just interesting to bring in the space because this is where I'm speaking from. So where did it begin? Like there's a lot of possible understandings of inner dance. Obviously, like what we hold began with the experience. This is what people are going through. For me, it didn't really begin with that per se, because before I experienced it, I was perceiving many things, and what I perceived then shifted into experience. I did enact the perceptions so that I created the conditions where I would purify the body. I wouldn't just go to a workshop. I never attended workshops, sessions, trainings. I perceived oneness, and I found the discipline to dive deep into oneness with nature, letting go of all attachments, and then I experienced the space. Now, because the experience was communicative, the experience was a perception, and when the inner dance was brought to others, that experience people were having, it was holding on to certain truths that weren't mine, truths that belong to nature, to the nature of who we are. And we've unraveled quite a lot of that, like, already. So I think here is where the mind-body situation still comes into the picture. We need now a new understanding of both the mind and the body. Considering it is in the body that we begin to experience the mind, how do we find that inclusive third space that allows for ways that these polarities can assimilate each other? Like, what is assimilatory? So let's say if esotericism was based on the need to create societies that were hidden, you know, like secret societies that could pass on knowledge, because there was this rejection of knowledge that didn't fall into the powerful domains that controlled societies. Now that there's an openness, that we are a lot more free. There's permission or permissibility. There's acceptance of that which falls outside of the norms that held knowledge traditions. Then I think we would need to pave the way for experiential, I would say pre-symbolic knowledge systems. Like, how do we build? Okay, so inner dance in its normal practice, the basic practice, the practice that gets people to surrender and allow energy to flow. The experience unto itself is a rupture. It's a break. It's the ability to break from what binds us. And one possible break is from epistemology itself, the theory of knowledge, which could be scary. Epistemology into itself brings us into a state where do we even know what it means to know? Like, what do we know to be true? What are the truth conditions? And when we put that out there, is there coherence? Is there correspondence? Is there pragmatism in the truth? Is the truth well put together? Is it universal enough that I'm not just saying it? Is it shared? Is it pragmatic? Does it work? Innerdance initially breaks from existing epistemologies. And epistemologies don't have to be cultural, scientific, religious. Epistemologies can be very personal. They can be very personal. But because all personal truths would always be bound by the global, then this is initially the first aspect. Like, we are breaking from epistemology. But this isn't enough. It's not enough to just stop knowing. It's not enough to utter neo-Buddhist, like self-help book messages that, okay, just let go, stop thinking is wrong, thinking won't get you anywhere, don't ask questions. There has to be a return to structure, or turn to the mind. And that's why the situationer is actually quite important, because when we draw out these past, like maps of how knowledge had been constructed, this isn't necessarily how things are anymore. Like this battle, this opposition, this contradiction, it doesn't seem to hold that much for many of us, where maybe let's just replace this with just in general what people say is spiritual. Now that there's a lot more openness, there could be a scientific spiritual opening now. Let's say, okay, we tabula rasa, blank slate, white page, blank canvas. Within that openings, how do you build like something new? So yeah, I think this is where we could start like interesting conversations globally. I find these very I find these ideas, like bringing up these ideas within systemic conversation, like methodological conversation, like really, really interesting. So just looking at the Western esotericism element in Wikipedia, like I think one of the most important parts here that we can call from would be coming from Antoine Favre's work. He wrote the book Almost, that contains what is esotericism, and I think there's still a lot there that we can glean from. That there are these 6 fundamental components or characteristics that we can use to look at the practices, the movements that are at work now, and we can check in with, okay, where does inner dance come in if I was to present it in the world? Now, 6 conditions that defined if something was part of Western esotericism or esotericism in general. Correspondences. This is the idea that there are both real and symbolic correspondences existing between all things in the universe. Beautiful, like as above, so below. This is the dictum of the esoteric teachings that are still being spoken today, because it holds so much intuitive sense that what is inside is outside, what is above is below, what is the many is the one. This is interesting as well. The natural universe is imbued with its own life force, and there's a non-hierarchical, complex, hierarchical, not non-hierarchical, but complex and diverse systematicity in nature. Like in the Philippines, our cultures are very much this. That the ancient people believe that the rocks themselves held sentient force. The wind was intelligent, as were the plants and the animals. Imaginations and mediations. Fevre believed that all esotericists place great emphasis in both the human imagination, and I would point out mediation to be the most important concept here to look at. That there's this need for ritual symbols, images, mandalas, and intermediary spirits, and as well mantras that almost channel the worlds separating the material and the divine. Like I'm not really like a ritualistic person. I go straight to the core, but I do find that there is a reason why humans need to deal with symbols. Okay, experience of transmutation. There's this emphasis on the transformation the practice brings about. So it's not just about devotion, prayer, but that there is, in fact, like a deep change, a real transformation that goes with the belief and the following through with those beliefs. And then this one, what does I say again? Yeah, like that all religions, all world religions, spiritual practices are one. Right? That all religions are one. All religions, all gods are fundamentally just one. And then a lot of people would find this interesting, the transmission. That there's this emphasis that the teachings and secrets would be transmitted from a master to a disciple through a process of initiation. Yeah, we see images like that up until now. It's just that they're wearing different clothes and they're using different terminology, sometimes still borrowing terms that came from those elements. Yeah, so are we in an esotericism, or are we coming out of it? It's it's for me something that would be determined by all of us, depending on how this movement, this work is being presented. Already when you turn up like social media, when you listen to what instantaneously come through in how people speak, there are just many different ways, and all these ways are beautiful. They're all valid. I don't question any of these ways. I belong to all of it. I resonate with all of them. They're all important for me. It's important to watch them, to observe them, like to have empathy for what is happening, like in here and out there. Okay, like I'm going to try to close soon, like to bridge a lot of these ideas that have opened up. Right. So we started this conversation around the question of rationality. What does it mean to be rational or to be rational? And when I spoke about inner dance being initially like a systematic break, like it could be like an interruption, or it could be it like we disrupt the thinking process. We're learning how that could be done. The overthinking, over worrying, fear-based thinking process. It could be even this, like something would just explode from the inside. And from like an emotional standpoint, emotions and rationality have always been at odds with each other. It's only been lately through the work of, like, let's say, neuroscientists like Antonio Damasio, where emotions are now seen as, in fact, a deeper rationality when we take in deep structural observations as to what is happening, like in the limbic system, the basal ganglia system, the metabolic system, the immunity system. So I think for because of these contradictions, there's a need to still look at the mind-body relationship, like how does this shape up today as the body starts to move on its own and to be explored as its own innate universe? What would happen, like, to the mind? What would be a relationship to the mind? When I think of the rupture concept, a possible third space would be, let me just erase these for now. There's this Lacanian psychoanalytic or structural, I would say structural, because there was some linguistic, philosophical, and psychological thinking around these possibilities. These would be the three Lacanian registers. So the real would be primarily like the absolute. It's the inconceivable. It's the universal universe. And then there would be the imaginary, which would be where we are now, the 3D world, the world of language, the world of the world of illusion, the image. So according to Lacan, the symbolic mediates the real and the imaginary. Looking at this from like an inner dance standpoint, when there is rupture, and the rupture would happen from the space of thinking, the space of making real what, in a material sense, it's so confusing. We think the real would be, okay, the real world, but the real to Lacan would be more of the real, the absolute real. When people undergo like a rupture. What I have been observing through a playlisting and body holding process is there could either be a drop into the symbolic. So then there would be these experiences of like dream images. There would be all these archetypes, and sometimes these really hold strong, so that when they arise in the body, people see them as real like entities. So the symbolic would be the mediatory space, and we are studying the brain state of inner dance, where there could be dimensional relationships between just how much activations are taking place or spreading across the brain when you spread like maybe a little bit. Let's say certain brain lobes, say the frontal cortex and the temporal lobe. A lot of memories, emotions are there. A lot of control is there. The occipital lobe, which is where we hold visions. So if any one of these are lit up, but it's going to be like an either or. It won't be all of them. So we're not even considering the parietal here, the parietal lobe. A lot of music are designed, the more cathartic music are designed to maybe hit these mostly. So when we see bodies are moving in the process, like a lot of the activations would be here. It's when visions appear and like deep understanding comes to. That's when the occipital lobe starts to light up, and the parietal it just helps with integrating like a lot of the senses together. Localized activations based on certain musics that people are using would bring about a very, very symbolic process, a symbolic journey. And so especially when people are using, let's say, song elements that have very emotional, very human story elements that could evoke or provoke. Yeah, those would be very, very responsible for experiences that would yeah, like delve into the symbolic. And in a way, the symbolic is actually interesting because the symbolic itself is the mediation register. In a way, it's that which initiated the baby into the person. Like we were the baby, and now maybe this is the adult. It could be like the parent. It could be the one with the persona, the psyche. And were we to go back to this, one of the main questions is, can you go straight to this? Very often, a lot of people, they need to pass through this domain, like initially. There is this symbolic, almost dream space, which is a collective space. It's like a shared space where when we go to sleep, we're all dreaming together. And when you enter that space, very often the question would come, it's like, is that like real? The thing that I saw, is that actually, do I believe in that? Is that real? Or is it, am I making it up? So I think that could bring us into the mind-body problem from its origins. Now, René Descartes was the man implicated to have come up with the mind-body problem from its modern version, that the mind and body are separate. And Descartes into itself is interesting. He tried to come up with proof that God exists. So he's very, very spiritual. But Descartes was a mathematician too. So something that he was looking for that is shared by these two is he was looking for certainty. He was not okay to be in skepticism or doubt. He wanted to be sure. He wasn't okay with the unknown. Like he was freaked out by the darkness, and as the Western man were about to be initiated into the age of the enlightenment, the age of rationality, enlightenment or rationality. There was this need for an epistemology that wasn't so clear in that time. So Descartes was quite influential as a philosopher. He may be one of the most influential philosophers because an epistemology comes from Cartesian thought. So this is something we are redrawing out. To Descartes, thinking about like these like small, big people, to Descartes, we do not have what's called innate ideas. My handwriting is just so bad sometimes. We don't have innate ideas. Like when we're born as babies, ideas aren't concretized yet. Innate ideas are substances managed by the rationally developed mind, and the baby is not yet rational. To Descartes, innate ideas are what you might call self-evident, which in a way it's like, that's so obvious. Don't need to think about so much. It's innate ideas need to be clear, and they also need to be distinct, meaning each idea needs to be separate from each other. And for Descartes, like this is already proof that God like exists. He was trying to come up with like a mathematical proof that God exists. And I guess that's his mathematical, it's his mathematical spirituality. And for that, we now have JTB. Like for him, we could have built upon like a mentality that was founded on this first, like this is the first principle, and then like the mind would come out of that later on. Like so what do we do with this? For one, this is where mind-body problem or mind-body separation begins. When we think of the baby, and we judge babies to be irrational, we're already putting quite a lot of bias there. We need to because we were experiencing the mind and we are experiencing the body. If we are going to stick with the general notions of these particular words, then we're going to stay stuck with what we think they mean. So to redraw these out would be part of the new epistemological construction that would be playing out. One particular maybe neurobiological concept that I was looking at like over the last weeks in the trainings here. Don't know if you've heard of the what's called the default mode network. I mean, even something as simple as the DMN or the default mode network brings instantaneous feedbacks that self-corrects Descartes' mistakes, you know, in bringing that separation about. The default mode network in the past used to be called, I think it was the task negative network. Now, this is a bunch of brain regions that light up when we are not active. When we're not actively, let's say, thinking or working out clear goals. We're not working on like time-based sequencing of activities. So when we're off, you know, when we hit the off switch, something actually turns on. And what this is saying is when we're not thinking, we're actually thinking. So that when we're not rationalizing, when we're not rational, there is another form of rationality that is happening. And I would go so far as to research that the DMN, which is, let's say, something that turns on while we're daydreaming, whilst we are playing games, or just generally playing when we're meditating. This is in large part what innerdance wakes up. And so when we do study like the different regions that are lit up by the default mode network, one of them would be, let's say, the precuneus lights up the occipital lobe, where visual spatial elements are turned on, so that when we're relaxing, suddenly we're imagining situations. We're seeing the past, we're seeing the future. So when we're idle, when we're not thinking, we're seeing. So one of the more interesting parts for me that lights up in the default mode network would be the angular gyrus. Like we can maybe actually look at that on the apps after I get rid of the screen. The precuneus. And the angular gyrus is interesting, but not just because it's the part of the brain that's responsible for written language. It's responsible for what's called metaphor. Now, this is a word we're going to be bringing up again and again and again over the year. Like, what is a metaphor? It's when you start to bring about an understanding of one thing through the domains and structures of another. So it's maybe the contrast to literal thought. Like when we create judgments, when we imagine things to be as we think they are, then we are literalizing the world. Innerdance often goes outside of literality, and for me, metaphor is what is often beyond rational. Metaphor transcends rationality. The ability to metaphorize means you have the ability to think of one thing through the essence of another. It means your mind can expand through all these extensive networks of light, electricity, and in so doing, that's when the body itself begins to it's when the body is thinking for us. It's the body's ability to think through the white noise, through the non non-connected, non-synaptic neurons in the brain that has yet to create connections that would been part of operant conditioning that makes us associate certain ideas in relation to others. So bringing the body into a different stage of rationality, a higher, expansive or extensive rationality. I feel this is when a mind-body solution eventually comes forth. It's just that there will be many moments where this will be tendentious. So going back to yeah, like let's say the symbolic, the real, and the imaginary. When the baby is born, this is the body. And when we are initiated into symbols, placeholders, mediators, mediators could be priests, they could be gurus, they could be rituals, they could be religious icon, which we, to have a fetish means to apply, to give power to an object, particularly in a religious way. And that basically landed us here, like our very initiation to the language process unto itself, from the oral, which is sound, we shift into the image. And this is what binds the mind at the moment. Like we are here, like we are very much in imaginary states, and it's not always easy for the mind to go straight back here. So without, let's say, diving into the original body, the origins of the body, the work that we do is really actually quite simple. It's to recognize what is there. And the body is really just, the body would be nothing without what it embodies. The body is an embodiment. Like it's not just a whole bunch of organs and cells and neurons and endocrine glands and tissue and muscle and bone. The body is what it embodies, and without canceling out any of these, these things that I mentioned, like bones, muscles, these are evolutionary nature, and they hold historicity. They're never just what they seem to be. From a metaphoric level, they hold valuable stories. And so if our mind isn't constantly pushing away, no, that's not true. It's the mind is more true and concepts are more true. We can see how far that has brought us, like the concepts, the images, the thought forms. Let's call them thought forms that we're so attached to. We can see what that has brought us, especially when we read the news and see what's happening outside. A real embodiment, just really creating the conditions where a true embodiment would happen. All these tools then that we study, like never think that we are just playlisting or we're just touching the body, or we're just using these words to bring about context, and these images that appear, that they're just illusions. Every single tool brings about a real embodiment. And I think this could be a starting point, a conversational starting point, as to when you hold a space, you would have these two options to regard, just to clean up as we close. You either, depending on how you're holding, what you're holding, when you're holding, you go from here to here, or you would insist in, and there's nothing wrong with that, you would insist in like passing through here, like I need to take a detour because this is too much. This is the inconceivable. So I would pass through here, and maybe I would stay there for a time and a half. Right? I would stay there for a time and a half. And then maybe when I'm ready and I don't need that so much, I'm happy enough to get here. So what we would study contextually is this is a brain state as well, because we're not invalidating the body of these, we're also concepts. This is a brain state, and this is a brain state. I was even thinking about, if I was to study Descartes' brain right now, like what would Descartes' brain look like from back then, understanding that Descartes was you know, like from the 16th century. What was before that? It was religious, and primarily that, and then he was shifting or bringing us with him into the age of light or enlightenment from a rationalist perspective, religious, but also like non-thinking, more primal, more tribal society. So we were much in the default mode network back then, and we had traveled into scientific rationality, you know, post this. So in some sense, we are going back to a brain state. We aren't just going forward, we're going back to something that was there when we were not yet obsessed with pushing away the unknown. You know, Descartes' obsession with certainty was mediated by Cartesian doubt, which is, we already spoke about this, like hyperbolical doubt. I don't believe in anything, so give me something to believe in. And so he came up with cogito ergo sum, which is I can see that I am thinking, therefore I am being. You can see what he did with this. So let's say if this was like a box, and this box is thought, and here's being, and maybe this is like a ball. He put being inside thinking, because causally he says therefore, or ergo, cogito, I am conscious, therefore I exist. So he dominated thinking to be the cause for being, and that's part of the war. That's part of the confusion as to what is what is causing what. And all on those, he really then just went ahead and just kept creating like dichotomies and separations, saying, okay, because thought is the highest, then innate ideas are, thoughts are existing in and of themselves, outside of the body. Like thoughts are outside the body. Like we don't need a body for thoughts to exist. I'm not going to give an answer or an opinion whether that was right or not. It's really just an open question right now as to, can your thoughts exist without your body? And if that was so, what should we do? What should we do with this? So watching all of these spiritual awakenings that return us to a deeply real experience of what is the body, like a return to the body. Like these are open questions. These are open questions for us to unravel through our long study process with everyone, with the whole world that is really interested in. What are we? Okay, so I'm going to stop there, hoping that this, for me, like these sound really conceptual, but I find these to be important philosophical reflections for those who are bringing the work out there, particularly in understanding how knowledge is so much more acceptable now, that's emergent knowledge, personal knowledge. Like I can be a truth bearer, but because like a lot of people will be dealing with questioning, like how do you know that's okay? Like watching these bodies go into like super weird, like watching the body look like it's going through some kind of demonic possession. Like my daughter attended like an inner dance workshop last Saturday, and like we were doing a demo, and the guy in the middle, he was from France. As soon as it starts, he's going like this, and his body's going like that, and she's there, she's facilitating, she's holding the musical instrument. But I talked to her like the next day. Said, "Oh, did you enjoy that? How was it?" She said, "Yeah, it was really nice, but everyone was watching me, and then I was just making the music." But she thought it was really nice and cool to see how the space holder was able to put like a demon inside a body, so that now there's a demonic possession. And she said that without an emotional and energetic charge. She's saying that primarily because she saw something on Netflix where a possession was happening and someone's body was doing that. So the default mode network of the global brain is at work right now. The semantic, iconic, and echoic network is spread out so that we're all sharing these concepts because of past experiences that lead to these connotations, these instantaneous judgments. So even though it seems like the space is quite open, there still would need to be like some kind of intelligence, a new intelligence that frames all of these. And without a philosophical starting point, we would just be giving people music to play, and then you press play, and then we're subject to all these systems of interpretation that we can put out that would feel quite useful to hold the training, to hold the spiritual process. There's something like a lot deeper in terms of inner dance that actually integrates many perceptions. Like when I was living in the island alone, and even as a child, I think I'll close with this. This is really important for me. I was born to a really interesting family system. Like my father was a very extremely well-read man. He was an intellectual. He could speak 22 languages. Okay, he was a musician, he was a scientist, he was a poet, and like he got that through synchronicity, which to others would be through an accident. He basically got shot when he was a young boy, and the bullet entered his head. Exiting here, it destroyed a part of his brain. He had only one eye because his one eye was destroyed, like this was shattered. But because that happened when he was very young, he basically went through a neuroplasticity where he grew up with this ultra genius. Like I would speak about this because I'm actually proud of him. Like I was very angry with him when I was growing up until the time he died. I never communicated with him clearly. It was only when I was living in the island where I was very interconnected with who he was, because then I actualized my own brain cells and all of my cells to acclimatize to the project that he was not able to fully like fulfill. Like I had to come through. I bear also his name. So I'm very interested in how like trauma, like deep trauma, like the shock, the rupture, the break could bring about like this other sense of capacity. So when I was growing up, like we had the biggest library I knew about. Like I've been to many houses, no one had that many books. So I became like a speed reader as a child. I would carry like 5 to 7 books to my room, and then I would read these like when I was maybe 10, 11, 12, like super fast. I wouldn't totally read everything if I didn't need to, but I had a way of speed reading. Because when you train yourself when you're that young, there is enough plasticity to retain knowledge and to absorb information. A lot of the young children now, they can do that. My son can read a Harry Potter book in 2 hours, and he reads everything. He's not skipping. I'm watching him. So there's something about the brain, the innerdance brain itself, that can actually bring us there if you just had the conditions to rise up, not just into the spiraling motion of emptying out, but to hold information, not just like to throw it away. But what I wanted to speak about was how his books were all over the place. There were like medical books. I would read those. There would be fiction, all kinds of nonfiction books. There would be spiritual books. So when I was living in the island, I actually was looking at religion. I was looking at religion and science. I was looking at religion and science. I was filled with religious doctrine from my past. I was filled with scientific awareness, philosophy, and like a lot of it, I was filled with it. Like in both sides of the brain, they actually merged, and I saw that everything was like a one thing. And so when inner dance came forth, and a lot of you know the story, the principles are really, really basic. And one of them is that you are your own source of wisdom in the beginning. But because you are not you, you belong to this much, much larger context. When you go through an awakening, you also awaken with the world that you are part of. And that means remembering all the parts of the world that is essentially you. which is a way of understanding what ego, as opposed to the eco, or the global, means right now with what's happening in the brain that's seemingly emptying out, coming into universality, becoming cosmic. And then once growth stages come, there's this global mind that begins with the movement. When the body's moving like that, that's the planet moving with you, in you, through you. And when that happens more and more, so there's something happening to many brains. I'm just watching it. The brains that can handle multiple inputs, create connections, create these synaptic connections. And, it's like there's this greater understanding that then would lead to the experience we are yearning for, like not just an empty experience. So then when you do study the music and when you do study all of these elements, they're not random. There's something organizing it all. Your body knows what to do. It's so complex, but your body knows what to do. I'm not just talking about the dance. I'm talking about how all the billions of neurons, the trillions of cells, they're all coordinated, like something's coordinating. So the body that begins as seemingly empty, which is actually full, the mind that seems full but actually starts to empty out, when they synchronize, when they match, you take it like a day at a time, You put in your presence, you put in the journey. That transmutation process is going to take place. It's just the thing with mediation and transmission, this idea that there's this need for the teacher, the guru, the master, the healer to pass on the knowledge to the disciple. This whole transmission concept that's being told over and over again in this new process. I'm not just talking about this Kundalini thing. It's an old story that's being repeated like all over the place. If we are studying this one like this one domain itself, like inner dance creates the conditions where wisdom can happen from this innate space, this original space. Hoping these inspire you as you go along. And these will especially be useful when you have to speak about this later. Take your time. The ability to philosophize will help you to empathize with what are people thinking when I speak to them about these. Are they coming from their religious doctrine, from their scientific methodology, where you need like strong evidence for that to be real? When you have something like inner dance, when you put that out into the world, it's very strange because it doesn't exactly fit into this thing on the left or this thing on the right. Having spoken about my own process with this, it's because it comes from all of it. So there's a need for inclusion. There's not a need to invalidate like, that's trash and this is better. I'm going to try this out because that didn't work. But maybe there's another way. Maybe if you find the way where everything works together, inner dance is that space itself. Okay, so that's me. I've taken like a lot of time, I'm sorry, but I found these essential based on the actual outline. I wanted to speak about this during the last Zoom call, but I felt that this is better today where there's a big group to channel this between us. Ahilan, I'm going to ask you to facilitate a conversation that could continue after my sharing on this. Thank you so much for listening. Sending love from Singapore.
Yeah, thank you. Myself was born in Sri Lanka in a Hinduistic religious environment, but still in the tropical country. In a way, the language and everything is tribal, and I can really see this, what I was explaining from another perspective. And especially it shifted also when I came to Germany, and when I started to learn German and to realize the completely different context where I was suddenly in. And I find it also in the dances in a way, it does not fit into the spiritual, into the esoteric, or into the rational science. But in the same time, it's also somehow, when I started to speak, it's fully fit into each and everyone into it. It's the experience and the wisdom that comes through for me even explains some of the parts in the little or in the parts of the whole. So I find it. So there was a time I was really walking around thinking inner dance is kind of the theory of everything, and it can explain everything in my way of perceiving it. Yeah, I found it interesting to share with you. So if something comes to you and if you feel like open your mic and share with you. Yeah, it's cool with the hands. It's help us to facilitate this. Thank you, Annie. Yeah.
Hi, thanks. So I'm Amy. I'm from Cambridge in England. So I've got a question, or just I'm really interested about the embodiment side. So Pi, you were saying this bit where in dance, kind of bringing the body into a different state of rationality, body rationality. Just to give a bit of context, I've been studying trauma recovery for the past kind of 3 or 4 years, particularly with a somatic stance and embodiment, and with a guy called Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote The Body Keeps Score. So it's really about bringing yourself into your body to heal and recover. And hearing Pi talk about this bit around its body rationality, I wonder what kept coming up for me is it actually feels like more. And I have a story that I want to tell to kind of explain why I think it's more. But the questions I want to pose before I tell the story is it body rationality, or is it subconscious rationality, or is there something missing in our vocabulary that we don't yet have? You know, often we hear of mind, body, spirit, and we're talking about the mind, rationality, we're talking about the body, embodiment. We haven't really spoken about the spirit, apart from we have got a little bit philosophical and touching upon it a little bit. But is there something we haven't yet got a word for? And the reason I ask it, this is the story that I want to tell you, is my first ever innerdance. So about 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, I had a very bad burnout, like really bad, and it triggered a big PTSD break. And it was so bad that my body completely dysregulated to the point where I couldn't handle the sound of light switches being turned on and off, doors being shut, open and closed. That sound was so thunderous for me that it would make my body completely dysregulate and feel like it was under threat of death. Going in a car at nighttime and oncoming headlights, the bright light would make my body feel like it was going to die. And I remember being outside once when I was in this state, and the sound of a car engine felt like the roar of a dragon. Like, it felt so big, and my body literally curled into a ball, and I became mute. I couldn't talk. I was really completely broken. And so I sent myself to a clinic to recover. And there, you know, I did get some help, but my body rejected all drugs. So I had to do it all by myself. And basically, it was a lot of speaking therapy, because that's in the West what we deem to be what gets us through, right? And my body was too dysregulated to talk about the trauma that I had been through. So that's when I came to somatic therapies, and, you know, baseline somatic stuff that we might know about is mindfulness. But this was a lot more. This was really about getting into my body and relaxing my central nervous system and regulating myself and being in that state of regulation continuously before I could talk about anything that was too difficult. Now, I got to a place where mentally in my head, I felt a lot more regulated, but my body was still really hypervigilant. So these sounds and these noises, lights, they were still triggering me. Not quite as badly, but they were still triggering me. And I'd had maybe 18 months of therapy when I first stepped into my first inner dance. And it was helping a little bit, but I was still getting triggered very easily. And when I went into my first inner dance, I didn't really know what to expect. And I remember laying down and the music coming on, and I went quite quickly into a different state of being. You know, whether we call it the theta state or whether we call it, you know, whatever state we want to call it, I went to somewhere that was a little bit, you know, I was conscious, but I wasn't really thinking. And at that point, this is when inner dance was the earlier stages, so kind of soundtracks one after another. We weren't really doing soundscapes, and people were a lot more physically active. And people started screaming, and I hadn't been around that level of sound for a long time, and my body completely dysregulated. But a lot more emotionally, I was able to tap into emotions that I couldn't do when I dysregulated outside of this. And then I stayed in the inner dance. I didn't leave. It took a lot of courage, but I stayed in with that. And the sound changed and it moved me to a different state. And I was able to go from being extremely scared and dysregulated, feeling like my life was going to end, to recovery, or to witnessing elation in other people, which allowed me to feel, well, elation within the music. And something happened in my mind that allowed my body to go, oh, okay, you can hear these sounds and you can be safe. And from that moment, when I stepped outside of the venue that I was doing the inner dance in, I didn't react to sound again in the same way, unless it was really aggressive and loud. I was able to handle the sounds I couldn't handle before. And I'd spent 18 months doing somatic work and talk therapy and everything else. And so the reason I use that as a story is because I had been doing work that was embodied, that was very much from the body first, and it wasn't working. And inner dance did something more than just place me in my body. It placed me somewhere else in my subconscious or somewhere else at the same time as being embodied. That allowed my body and my mind to reprogram, have that neuroplasticity growth that it needed to go, okay, actually, you're no longer going to store it as a memory of threat. We're going to move this into a learnt place of safety. So I find it really interesting, this kind of, particularly embodiment is so popular at the moment, or it's becoming popular within the medical world. For me, when I try to explain inner dance to people, it's more than that. It's so much more than that. But it's very hard to figure out how to explain that. And one other thing I did want to say was I feel like there's a really interesting evolution to inner dance taking place at the moment. And I feel like there may still be scope for the older stuff. So I feel like the soundscapes that happen now, they can often take you straight into it very quickly. And when I have people come to me who are dysregulated, they often don't respond so well to the newer soundscapes. They often need a little bit of time to get into them. Whereas people who are slightly more regulated and in touch with themselves, or who've been doing inner dances, seem to respond a lot deeper. And I think age might have something to do with it as well, but just something that I've noticed. And actually, in fact, even myself, when I'm more dysregulated, which of course we all go into every now and again, the newer stuff can be more jarring for me. When I've come to it and I'm slightly more settled, then I really travel a lot deeper. So I find that quite interesting. And just one other point on the inner dance stuff as well that I think we haven't spoken about, and I'm sure we will at some point, is in trauma recovery, co-regulation is one of it's so powerful. It's so great for healing. It's so fast. And I feel there's an element of inner dance that does that. Obviously not when we're one-on-one, but when we're in a group, I feel like there's something about the co-regulation and energetics. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. I'd love to speak to your rich, resonant share. It's a lot there, and sharing something from your personal healing process it means a lot. So I think because a lot of people are interested in going into the creation modes now, the subconscious could be good to bring up. Yeah, that's a good word. I think we have choices as to dimensions that we can take people into, and it's embedded in your story. Like there's a way to go underneath the response mechanisms that are so inbuilt. It's not something you can think through. So when we think about the playlisting elements, let me go back to the screen because these are there are terminologies. Oops, there are terminologies there. Wait, I'm not sharing the screen. It's taking a while. Maybe, I don't know, maybe this one's disconnected, so maybe never mind. All right, so when we use songs act as constituent units. They're like the building blocks. And then when we use, let's say, I tend to use like synthesizers now because I'm interested in voltage controlled frequencies in the brain. I'm studying them, so I'm looking at correlations. And then some people are using the noise app. So when you think about the noise app, the constituent units there would be, the noises would be the building blocks as opposed to the songs. So the differences there would be the songs would trigger emotions and personal metaphoric or symbolic constituent units that need to be confronted. That's why the group session especially works. That's why going into it alone doesn't work sometimes so much. And that's why some of the newer playlists that you mentioned, they don't have the same like level of confrontation. Like there's some value to that confrontation. Done too often, it would construct loops inside people where we watched people going through years and years of the same process actually tell the same stories like in their bodies. So I think one interesting spiritual scientific meeting point would be meanings. Like how do we store meanings? How do we create meanings? How do we tell stories? Because like when we receive visions or dream images, we're like, oh, what does that mean? I know a lot of people, and I normally gravitate towards them who would not really be as interested in that. They'd be asking more the question, how are we even constructing these meanings at all? It's either you hold on to the literal meaning of an image or you look at, I'm making that up so I can actually reconstruct that if I have that power. So the more raw constituent units, like the noises or the ones that don't evoke the rationalizing thinking process would bring about meaning making from a more let's call them primitive. Like they're actually called spatial primitives in embodied cognition. I mean, the only reason why I put body mind in that way is the mind is now embodied in a way that it was disembodied, you know, that the mind is separate. So I'm interested in like rewording a lot of those for sure. So something interesting for us to see in the merging of science and spirit is that meanings are seen to be like a whole cosmos that we can explore, that is the body itself, that the body is a storage of meaning, meaning making processes, and somehow we can remake these meanings as we unravel. And I think there's nothing more enabling or empowering than that you have this ability to create your own life. So if we look at the possible openings, okay, do you start from like a complex space where you're holding on to all this information that's attached to you because of your you know, your shame, your anger, your guilt? Or is there a way to restart from the baby stage? So when you do describe the experience you had, that first one, and then the subsequent ones, the inner dance does have this design of going straight deep into the spatial primitives. It's like a way of burrowing, like let's say there's a wall that separates the self from the universe. We it's like we dig a hole underneath the wall, and suddenly we're on the other side. That means we need to go like super bare, like deep and bare into the heart of things. And based on a lot of the tools that we use, there is this capacity for something like inner dance to go straight into the most basic is what I mean. That's why it can work from the metabolic level, the immunity level, down to the cellular level. Those changes have energetic, electric, magnetic frequencies that would later become thoughts and concepts, you know? So it's like, how deep can you go? So I appreciate that you are validating all these different playlisting systems, the sequential song-based elements. I don't see we would push that away. I myself use quite a lot of those still, depending on where I'm at, just to create that level of confrontation, which is important. But I'm very, very interested in not looping as well. So like, thank you also for seeing the potency of where this is headed. Beautiful. Okay. Thank you. Ahlan, back to you.
Yeah, thank you. As next, Bridget is, yeah, can please.
Hi, Achillan. Thank you. Hey, Pai. Yeah, with the goal of kind of just integrating the knowledge and making sure that I'm grasping it correctly, especially in order to be able to speak to the kind of spaces I move in. I just wanted to check regarding the default mode network, if I have what you're saying correct there. So from a plant medicine perspective, what usually happens with your serotonergic kind of classic psychedelics like your mushrooms and the default mode network, it kind of in high doses takes the default, or the DMN takes it completely offline. And it kind of scrambles it in a way that through neurogenesis, of course, and plasticity, when the DMN then comes back online after you're coming out of your journey, it comes back healthier with kind of new connections and just in a better state. So I just wanted to be sure then in inner dance, if I'm understanding correctly, you're saying that the DMN gets activated in the inner dance, but then we rewire it, if you will, through the rupture or the break or the confrontation of the playlist, basically. Am I getting that right? I just wanted to double check
Mm.
because I've kind of felt this in my working with groups and innerdance already. I've felt this and have been wondering about the connection with the DMN. So I love that we're talking about that, but I want to be sure that I'm understanding that mechanism correctly.
Yeah, this is a powerful question. Thank you, Bridget, and happy to hear from South Africa for this call. I think it could depend on the like what we call the experience. So in South Africa, there's some work happening around, let's say, the sleep playlist, for example. And I think that would pertain to something going even outside or beyond the DMN network, which is not even that many parts of the brain. It's normally looked at to be 4 regions. Now there's maybe 8 regions. What I find interesting, what I would study based on the question you're holding is when you study sleep REM as opposed to wake REM, there are certain operations that need to shut down when we dream. One of those would be muscular paralysis. The other would in fact be the decrease and almost the non-existence of serotonergic production and release. Like serotonin goes empty during REM state, and this is still being studied. Like, why do you not need that? And the current insight is that serotonin creates the bond, the connection levels that allows us to bring about like happiness levels. But it seems like the absence of serotonin allows for synaptic traveling to go so far, way beyond, like great distances, so that we see weird things that we would never see when we're awake. So I would say that in REM state, while we're sleeping, the DMN network is closed. But what would be the difference then when we're awake and we're going to the REM state? So now when you study the inner dance process, when you see the body moving, yet we are simulating the REM state consciousness based on the waves of the neural oscillations. Like there's the simultaneous co-activation. Why is it that we're able to dream while experiencing the body moving in its own? So there's something important with the paralysis, because this is where memory consolidation happens. This is it's to do with the GABAergic, sending out GABA, that neurotransmitter that inhibits a lot of the other activities that takes place in N3 slow wave sleep. And I think that's where the deepest conscious happens. And when you move into REM state, there's this reading that the brain seems to be awake even though it's sleeping. So there's a higher dreaming in one way when we are activating the body in this way. The DMN network comes more from like an embodied level. So I feel there are DMN networks being lit up, but one of the parts of the DMN network would be the dorsal medial prefrontal cortex, and this actually inhibits motor functions. So when the body is moving, but the rest of the DMN network is moving, there's more motoric spatial awareness happening, and that has a lot to offer in terms of emotional release. When it's needed. There could be more that active, embodied and active state of healing. But we need to understand that there must be the immobile, paralyzed, much deeper state, which a lot of people may be missing, which is in slow wave sleep. I think either slow wave sleep, which is what you described as, going beyond the DMN, that's a precursor to REM state. But a REM state type of activity could also be a precursor to that super deep surrender called slow wave sleep. So I feel people need to experience like both somehow. So you need, as a space holder, to have a repertoire. You need like a whole bunch of tools that won't be standardized. And through your intuition, because we're learning more and more how this functions, we're not getting instructions from the outside. Like through working with people's bodies, it's like you just know. And you yourself, as a clinical psychologist, there's a lot of tools that you're tapping into that's not just the energetic. I'm looking out for people who can build diversity into this. So I think there's something interesting to your question for sure. I don't know if this helps.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Carla is next. Hi, Carla.
I don't speak very well English. I try to speak a little bit with us. I'm Carla. I'm a physiotherapist. I work in the south of France. I work in a hospital, and I start now my first walk in innerdance. And I try to do in the hospital when I work in gynecology with my patient. I put innerdance 3 times the last week, and I have a big change in the body, my woman's. And I'm so happy for work with you and feel the changement, emotional changement, mental changement, physical, mental, everything. An example, the last time I worked with a woman, it can't do, it don't have activities, sexual activity, because the muscles is so close. And a body is so contract, the muscles is feeling so contract, and have like a fear of the life, a fear of everything. And when I put the playlist and nothing possible, 1 hour after is the body change complete. When I touch the body is like, open. I do everything what I need, and the smile and the eyes, like what you Pai tell today, the horse is doing, les hormone change in the moment. It's so beautiful, so beautiful. I have another one. Is last Saturday. I work with problems. Somehow work very, very hard work with the competition of the world gymnastic, and the same. I feel so fear in the body, so confused, like I do or not do, but I trust in the process. And why you start today the lesson with includes everything, mysticism, esotericism, medicine, religion, is what I feeling the last time Saturday, because I feel put some shoes in my room, and when I open the door with my patient, I see, and okay, you do this. I tell, don't think, feel. And again, 1 hour after the treatment is like feel liberty, feel I'm open the world. And today, the 2 patients come to see me and tell me, thank you. I don't know what you do because I don't understand, but I trust in the process. And I see with a few days, my life changed complete. And also for me, because I'm facilitate. Sorry, my English. I facilitate, but I dance with. It's so beautiful because I feeling my body go fly. It's so beautiful. Thank you very much. I see you every week. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I want to say thank you as well and add to this, just to maybe help you keep facilitating this work as you learn to trust more and more. There's something about that playlist, Anything is Possible. I was really happy with it because I worked on it quite hard. I used almost like maybe 10 synthesizers, 2 programs, and I put a lot there. I was designing it in a way that if I was to structure it, the design of that was to allow, like, cortisol is the stress hormone, and adrenaline is like when people are like afraid, fighting, like running away, very, very anxious or scared. I was very interested in cortisol and adrenaline mixing with serotonin, dopamine, and endorphins. And it's primarily designed for people who are actually experiencing depression and pain. So I'm quite interested in all of these feedbacks, where yeah, like especially oxytocin, I've already mentioned, so I didn't mention it now. I think working in that part of medicine where we need to open women's bodies, oxytocin is very, very important. But to allow oxytocin to mix with all the other neurotransmitters is very hard. So I did some really crazy things with that playlist where I would like take my voice, cut them up, and make them go backwards, forwards to maybe confuse the mind. And then I put an exact rhythm there that I was hearing in my own body, like give them something consistent. So even as they keep like melting and decomposing, there's something constant that can hold on to all the weirdness and deconstruction that would just extend a lot of the stuckness that's it's people's bodies. So yeah, I'm grateful for the feedback. It's really amazing. Okay.
Right. I remember in the session when you speak and you tell I, progression, regression, the body move, and I feel the tell me in English what is.
That's the throat.
Yes,
Yeah.
move, like it's so. My goodness, so beautiful.
Thank you. Wow. What a beautiful experience. Does anyone else want to share? So,
Hello,
Hi.
everyone. I would like to share that it's in process still, but I'm drawing, listening constantly, anything is possible. It's been already 5-6 sessions, and yeah, it's been amazing. I start, it's in 4 pieces that became in one big piece, and I start with the silhouette of my body, and from there, I didn't finish yet. I still in process, but it's been really powerful and interesting because at this moment I feel that everything is falling down inside me, like creating a new space. I don't know how to explain because it's been like listening many times and sometimes twice per day in the time that I'm drawing. But yeah, when everything, I'm taking photos and I will love to share
Oh yeah.
the process.
Yeah.
But I like every time I do it, I take a photo and then at the end I'll share all the process with the photos. And yeah, it's been really amazing. And yeah, I just wanted to, I hearing a lot today, like anything is possible. So I'm working with this piece also. And yeah, I can say that it's a lot of water, a lot of flowing and broken like boundaries. And yeah, I don't know really good how to explain, but yeah, after you will see on the drawing, once it's ready, for sure, I will share with all of you. Thank you.
Mm. Yeah, I want to say something to this as well. And so good to see you, Elias, here. I think we're still collaborating then in this way. Elias wanted to bring us to Spain, where we would do a collaboration between sound and art, but it's not yet the time to do that. We would love to see your paintings as well, for sure. But what's so beautiful about what you're saying is art should be process oriented. And I think a lot of art starts to get diminished when it becomes about the output or the outcome. So when we say the work, we think it's the painting, but the work is the work of art. And the way you're doing it through this observation is almost like a research into this is the art. This is the art. Like we are the art. So we are the output. So we're not projecting the art outwards. It's actually in here. So I think that really paves the way for like inner art, which is the heart. It's so good because it's also synesthetic. You're bringing sound, the image, and movement all together. It's all one. And this is really powerful because the work that we're doing with schools, the work that we're doing with prisons, it's about bringing in the music while people are doing art. And the very creation of the art is in fact a dance, right? So the last thing I want to say is when I created Anything is Possible, I was really interested in if innerdance could construct the playlist itself. If innerdance was the one that produced the music, what would it look like? And it was in this one playlist that I felt that, okay, got it. Innerdance is producing that. It's not just music produced for other purposes, but if something emerged out of innerdance itself, something from the inside, not from some album that was put together, then like I feel there's some kind of peak point, and I'm not even interested in creating for now. I'm bored because I feel like okay, I've done it. I'm okay for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Sandrine. You are next.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be back. I came in late, so I don't know yet. So what I've been told tonight, but I will relook at it tomorrow. But because of the sharing, there are three things that I wanted to share to contribute into the total of experiences. The one thing I think is important to get back again on the kids. I worked with them in primary school and in secondary, like when they're 13, 14. And I now keep on using the womb room with them. And I can see every week in the same way there is a lot of progress. And especially for the kids at this point that I can see with my eyes, or by experiences, is the ones with an autism, ASF or autism spectrum, and with like an development retardation. How do you say it in English? Yeah, a lower mental capacity than their own age. And it's every time again when I put on the womb room, it's really like their nervous system is getting stabilized. And now the last week, it was really that I didn't have like one child who fell asleep between my legs, but like three child. So it's really incredible how it reacts on it. Also the girl from the last time who went into a crisis, it was again something on the playground. And again, I put it on the music, and it was like 5 seconds, and she's putting her thumb in her mouth. She came with me, and she just fell down into like some inner peace moment. So it's very nice to see how the progress is still there. So I'm looking forward to see how each week it progresses. I also use it like in secondary with a 14-year-old, but more like as a 5-minute thing to start up the lesson. And again, 5 minutes. There, I use it as a practice between like nonverbal communication that we all the first step in it is like waarneming. I would say it's the seeing, and I use it as an exercise by we see with our sentences, not only with our eyes. So it was like the auditive, like with our ears. And after 5 minutes, it was crazy. Also, again, with different kind of emotional experiences they had. Again, a lot of water and fountains and jungles. Also, with that age, it's crazy how the same themes are coming back, but also like the morning around a dead cat, but it really get one kid into tears because there was like still a lot of emotions who didn't have the room to be freed or something. Cats also like they feel like there's happening a lot inside my body, and then I combine it with other music that I usually use in my lessons. And then I really feel like, oh, from the beginning, I'm getting into my body, and then I could release something out of me. And then they all look at me again. Do you know what I mean? Because I know what I'm saying it looks stupid, but this is the best way that I can explain what happens with the music. So again, the same things like before are continuing. So I'm happy to see how it's progressing. That is one thing. Then the other thing are 2 experiences of myself. One within is I went out with some friends for a weekend, but normally I don't drink alcohol anymore because within 2 years my body couldn't take it. So after 1 glass of wine or 1 glass of something, I get a lot of headache and I get like all the symptoms of a really bad hangover. So normally I don't drink. I just use it in moments that I know, okay, I know I will have 3 days with a hangover, and then I totally feel it in the whole of my body. So that was this weekend, but then at night, it was 3 o'clock. I drank a lot too much. But then I thought, let me put on the sleeping music, and I put on synchronic sleep. And I was into my bed at 3 o'clock, and I wake up at 9 or something. And it never happened like this. So I was really awake. I was energetic, and I didn't felt anything about the alcohol, about the hangover. And for me, it's a crazy thing because it's over 2 years. I can't drink 1 glass of wine or 1 glass of something to have all the crazy symptoms. And now I didn't have anything. So I was also, I think it's worth managing. I don't think we have to commercialize it. But still, Ali, because I know for me, it's my liver or something, it's something underneath would make that my body can't get the toxins out of my body. So I know that for that. But the second evening, again, we drank. I checked it again, the fact check. And again on Sunday, I didn't felt anything. So I really think it's also an important experience to share. And the last one is that I use for myself I traveled, how do I say it, on the regression progression yesterday. But it was really, but I got something with all those playlists. I fell asleep. as hard as they are, I fell asleep at some point. So now I had it again, but in my dream, there was a guy who was coming out of the dark. And I saw him and I was like flabbergasted. How do you say it? Like, whoa, what a guy, or something like that. But within the, what a guy, I felt in a freeze, and I felt that I was going to collapse to the ground. But it was in my dream. So I fell to the ground. But at meta level, I'm still like the inner critical who's saying to me, oh my God, and now it's not the moment to fall to the ground. What are you doing now? But I'm falling. And then my body is freezing and it's getting into some kind of epileptic attack. But I'm still telling to myself, oh my God, behave. Everybody's looking. Get yourself up. But I was like really in an epileptic mode.
A hacer cosas todo solo. Solas que tú normalmente no haces. No sé, por ejemplo, es posible. Todo esto es que difícil en español.
Yeah, I would mute.
No, I was just saying my body was totally going into an epileptic state in the dream. And I was talking to myself in the dream, but I was not my own age. So I was like the teenager, or I don't know. It's now like an analysis of it. But then something in me, because I was really, I couldn't breathe. So I really get it into in an attack. And then something in me said, breathe, you have to breathe. And when I breathed, I woke up, but my heart was pumping like it really went somewhere very not okay or okay, I don't know. But my body was also very tense, and then it just after that, like breathe. So I wake up, and then it was like I realized that I was in a dream, but my body didn't react like I was just coming out of a dream. It was like it was really having it or something like that. So it was a crazy experience, and I would wondering if it was okay or what do I have to think about it. So thank you for listening.
It's very okay. Thank you. The womb sharing is really deep. There's something about what you're doing with the kids there that's going to have continuity. Took you a big picture to really contextualize this for yourself and into all these learning spaces that you're holding, but you're really bringing a lot of healing process to the children. It's amazing. In general, I'd like to spend this time to go into the playlisting for everyone. We're gonna go over this month, and what this does is it gives you guys the power to construct these yourselves, however long it takes. Okay, so we're gonna take our time, and I'm really like grateful that you're using the stuff that I've constructed. They're useful, but they're also just modeling something. There's something about active learning that is important, that you yourself go through your the construction processes in inner dance is also deconstructive, so that when you use these either songs or sounds, they would mirror what's happening in this space. So when the song choices and the sound combinations start to come from you, something's going to happen to your own brain and your own body and your own mind. So I would love to invite you, any of you, all of you, to go into the project. Um, my computer is not such a good model because I've actually tried to make more space for, yeah, like film documentation files. So I had to remove a lot of the songs. But but here are my programs that I use. And you can use none of them, you can use any of them. You can find others. This is one that I would start out with. It's a downloader. Actually, this might have been better, but this one for me is faster. So what I do is I would download things from, let's say, YouTube. And then let's say I'm looking for like a sound. Let's say to take Sandrin's example. Let's say I wanted to make a womb room playlist. These are way too long, at 10 hours. This is how long babies sleep. So let's say I'm looking for womb heartbeat sounds. Okay, so let's say I was happy with this. It's not really ideal because this is gonna take a lot of space. It's 8 hours. What I would do is I don't know if you hear that, but I would capture it. And this is okay in terms of licensing, because if you're not really going to sell this, or you know, then this is more of an art. It's not a, you know, you're not you're almost honoring like what you're borrowing. So anyway, that's like a first start. I'm interested in you starting the playlisting process by collecting your vibration, like what vibrations you're going to be holding. I think that's the starting point. And if you can find this anywhere. It could be there are downloaders in Spotify. I don't know how to use that. I'm not on Spotify. I normally use YouTube. In the past, I would just borrow the collections from people's music libraries, and I would look for what would have worked through synchronicity. I would be interested in your own process, and you can maybe share later on what it's like to collect your own sounds. And then we would do constructions with them. So we just finished a 15-day training here. And by the time we had gone into construction process, like this is like African Clockworks, for example, which is one of the playlists that I suggested in the green section of the website. Then basically what you're looking at is the structure of the energy. It's not just a playlist anymore. So I actually had participants from last week asking for the raw files and they said, okay, if I'm going to learn that program, maybe having a starting point, maybe like borrowing something that's already constructed could be like interesting. So you don't need to use this one in particular, which is like Logic Pro. It could be something like a lot simpler. And whether we use like a music editing software or DJ editing software, or even just playing these sequentially by yourself, this could be where we could go. And there's quite a lot of talent within the innerdance community as to the building of these soundscapes. So we would just be interested probably in if whether this is relevant to you, and if you wanted to go into the studio at one point, and if you wanted to spend more time already on learning the tools, not just learning the programs per se, but to learn them from an inner dance perspective, which means when you learn a particular technique, there would be corresponding studies in the psychologies, the philosophies, and the neurologies to substantiate why am I doing this? You know, like building context so that when you do bring this out, especially from a professional environment, either in therapy, in schools, in hospital or clinical conditions, then you can have that. So I think one of the other things to share be okay. So we haven't really shared like big folders with you guys, and maybe some groups have more access because of you know the person holding the country space is. So we can, like I myself, I'm happy to send these creations because then you can study them. You could use this as a way to study. So I would start maybe with this. This is like a lot of the classic inner dance playlist styles, going into a little bit more experimental, progressive. This one studies more of like narrative, something contained, something story-based, and this triggers a whole different set of brain waves as opposed to the more classic sequential music. These are mostly like synthesizers and like mostly like analog digital technology that mimics brain states. And yeah, so there's 4 folders: playlist, synthesis, 7 states, and the sleeping playlists would be interesting for some of you. Maybe give me a couple of days to maybe to finalize that this is really does have everything in it. And we're not just sending this out like just casually like that, because there's just so much material and we don't want to overwhelm you. Maybe we also need to set up a platform so that as we share this, we would still be gathering the kind of feedback that we're getting. And it's really, really important that you put in the feedback, because we're beginning to understand this. So there's something about all these amazing sharings from all these different languages that probably would not just inspire, but help us to recognize patterns like in the work, because a lot of these are different styles. This is constructions from all the facilitators out there who are in the studio already. So this is to say, we don't want to overwhelm you. At the same time, if we do open this up, we're wanting something more conscious as we go more and more into the subconscious, because we want to value and honor the experiences, not just in terms of your own, like what Sandrine shared about the alcohol. That's so cool. It's actually really cool. I don't want to advertise that yet out there for like what do you call that? When you drink too much, you have like hangover medicine, sleep playlist here and there. But that says a lot, because when we drink too much, there's severe stress there. And it's not actually easy to take care of the body when it's in that level of distress. It doesn't just snap back to normal. I think that the insight there would probably be about not just the depressant chemicals, which would slow down the body functions. Already that's what alcohol does, because alcohol is a depressant by nature, as opposed to like a stimulant. So I would probably feel that there's enough silent trigger mechanisms in the sleep playlist that actually send out epinephrine, norepinephrine, and maybe even cortisol in a healthy level that helps to buffer a lot of the healing process and the headaches and the pain, and then the other neurotransmitters, endorphins, which means like there's enough sympathetic nervous system innervations to balance out the much too heavy parasympathetic modes that just, yeah, kills us. It brings back life. So already those are super amazing feedback, and we should just keep logging that onto research. So I don't know if that's the type of thing you want to type out publicly, but this would be interesting for people who are studying these. When we verbalize it, it's one thing, but to actually log it in, it means like a lot, so that once we speak to, it's exactly what we talked about today, to bring this to all the domains out there, the institutional domains, like science for one. If we're saying that, oh, this works, they're like, okay, how so? Like, what do you mean? Have you gathered some data? So we're only really starting that this year. So I'm really thankful for those who have been logging in experiences. So I think we should close for exactly 3 hours. Are we? Yeah. I think we're like 6, or maybe, yeah, 5. Yeah, so I'll let Ahilan close. If you want to impart like a message as well, that just helps to round everything.
Yeah, something else I want to share when you go into the creation process. What I also like is to collect sound bites. Like when you go around the city, I collect. I just use like any sound I like, or I feel like it can be interesting.
Actually, to cut you a little bit, like anything that's possible is filled with sound bites. That's what makes it super weird and interesting.
Yeah. So to start to create your own library slowly, and then to go into the creation process, we would invite you to the next month. Okay. So thank you, everyone, and let's close together. If you can open your mic and say goodbye in any language you like, and make some noise. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
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 Ciao.
Adios.
Okay, see you guys soon. Bye-bye.
Vale.
Okay.
Vale.